and gentlemen, welcome to Binghamton City Council work session for October 4th, 2021. We're going to go right to it. We just wrapped up a budget meeting. And so at this point, I will do roll call.
Councilman Scarinci.
Present.
Councilwoman Riley.
Present.
Councilwoman Friedman.
Present.
Councilman Burns.
Present.
Councilman Strawn.
Present.
Councilman Scanlon.
Present.
And President Restadetti.
Present.
That's all 7 here.
Thank you. First up, we have Pat McGinnis. Pat, you're here? Oh, yes.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. So let's start with RL 206.
All right, 206 is accepting a donation of a stone bench and plaque that go on the wading pool at Rec Park, the Fish Boy statue. Apparently, we got one in about 1990, and since then it's no longer there. So the family would like a new one. So that's just permission for this one.
So anyone have any questions regarding that? Thank you. Next one, 207.
207 is our Halloween Fest, just authorization to let businesses hand out candy at that event.
Thank you. Okay, which businesses? Where do you get the candy from?
So we just kind of canvas around town. So it just depends. Each year it's a little different.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Pat.
Yep.
All right, we're going to move on to Chuck. Chuck, how are you? Well, we can start with 201. That's the amended 2021 JT Sewer project budget, personal services and professional services. Can you get a little closer to your mic? Is it on?
Sorry about that.
There you go.
It's funds to continue to pay people that are finishing up the joint sewage treatment plant project here, finishing out the bills, getting everything finalized.
Any questions for Chuck? Okay. 204.
Which one is that? So if you don't
That
have-
one is amended 2021 capital funds to adjust the serial bond revenue for NYSDOT.
This is just closing out some serial bonds that are closed out, taking the money out of the accounts and moving it into this, reducing the serial bonds that we're not going to borrow the funds for.
Any questions? All right, next one is 205, and that one is amended 2021 capital fund to adjust the serial bond revenue for grant pay downs.
Okay, every year we borrow the money off of bonds, and as we get the grants, we pay down the bonds with that grant money. That is what this is doing. We're reducing the bond debt for the grants that we receive.
Any question for Chuck? Okay, thank you. Next one is 208. That one's transferred from the general fund to the capital fund for the Waters 3 ramps for the cost of demo and geotech study.
This is the one that's 1.6 million. Okay, I'll let the mayor start off with this presentation. Give you guys a little bit more detail on the ramps itself.
Good evening, Council President Restadetti. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Mayor?
Good.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you, as always, for the opportunity to come down and answer questions and provide information to the members of City Council. What we're doing tonight is we put together a very short slide presentation that really delves into more of the specifics regarding the financing of the parking garage, the housing, the overall project itself. We recognize that since the last work session, that was the first opportunity for members of City Council to meet the developers. We have been continuing to provide a variety of different documents to City Council. We don't have an expectation that City Council is going to vote on this this Wednesday. We expect it to be held over and voted on at the next council meeting. So given that time frame, provides us with an opportunity to come down tonight, try to provide more information, answer questions, and then if the council members want to talk to the developers another time at the next work session, or there's other questions between now and then, it provides council members that opportunity as well. I will say we have not received very many questions at all between the last work session and this work session. But we want to continue to provide as much information as we can as possible. So I will ask the city clerk, Mr. Rogers, if he would go ahead and show the first slide. Okay, so this slide right here is just a real brief synopsis of the 7 Hawley Street parking garage project. Obviously has nothing to do with the Water Street parking garage project and housing project. We offer this really as a comparison. You will recall that this project opened earlier this year. In January, it's been open for almost a year, and we had been working on this project for a few years. We obviously needed to get this project complete and open before shifting our focus on the Water Street parking facility, because obviously you don't want to have any more than one parking garage down at a time. There are 302 parking spots in this garage. The total cost of this garage is $10 million, which comes out to $33,112 per parking spot. Hopefully you'll recall when this came up last time, there's a metric or a specific range that is used when it comes to the cost per spot when it comes to ramp parking garages. This number is within that range. It ranges anywhere from, I think, 27,000 to 35,000, depending on different types of amenities or how the garage is laid out, et cetera. How this project was financed was with a New York State Empire State Development grant of $2.1 million. We used a portion of our fund balance at $1.5 million, and we borrowed the balance at $6.4 million. You will recall that we typically try to use a combination of borrowing, fund balance, and grants as a three-stool or three-legged approach to this, because at the end of the day, it's parking revenue that is utilized to pay your annual debt service for parking garages. So if there's not enough parking revenue, then local taxpayers have to pick up the difference. And so that's why we try to put as much upfront for this as possible. And obviously in this particular project, this used to be a lot that was owned by Bura, which is the Binghamton Urban Renewal Agency. It did not bring in any sort of tax revenue to the city, county, or school district. And this project at 7 Hawley Street, while completed, still provides no tax revenue to the city. So Mr. Rogers, we can go to our next slide. Thank you very much. This is the current Water Street parking ramp. There are approximately 672 parking spots. It was constructed in 1970. Anyone who has been in there or can even look at this photo knows that it is plagued with structural issues and costly repairs. In 2006, a 7,000 pound concrete slab fell off the garage, splitting a trailer parked near the Boscov's loading dock, which is what happens when you kick the can down the road and don't make necessary costly investments in our infrastructure. Fortunately, no one was hurt or injured during that. And obviously, we want to avoid any sort of scenario in the future where public safety would be compromised. The next slide, please, Mr. Rogers. So to keep this ramp open another 2 to 3 years, that would cost $2 to $3 million in structural repairs. And so that's a very important point. I just want to reiterate again. If we were to invest $2 to $3 million to address immediate structural concerns, that would only give us another 2 to 3 years. And that doesn't include the code-related or electrical elevator work, We have elevators that are out of commission there. And there are a variety of electrical issues. This is very similar to the discussion we had with regards to why we moved forward to building a new fire station. We talked about investing millions of dollars into the floor in City Hall. It only extended the life a very short period of time. It didn't make sense to spend millions of dollars when you could spend more to build a brand new facility that would last decades instead of just extending the life a few years. This was the same problem that we confronted on the Collier Street parking garage, which obviously we tore down, and there's a surface lot in place there. It would have cost us millions of dollars to invest in the Collier Street garage to only extend its life a few short years. And we instead chose obviously to go the other route, which I just outlined, which was to spend $10 million on the 7 Hawley Street garage. So to demolish the existing ramp and rebuild it, you're looking at $17 million. All right, let me say that again. Just to demolish included in that 17 million is the cost of the demolition itself. So it's the construction and the demolition. We're looking at $17 million. So in any scenario, a geotechnical study must occur after the demolition. So what I mean by that is if you were just going to build a parking garage, or if you were going to build a parking garage and housing, regardless of what direction the city goes, there needs to be a geotechnical study. And that foundation work under a worst case scenario, and that's what we try to plan for, is give you forecasting and scenarios for the worst case scenario that would cost an additional $2 million. And you will recall from the last work session, Peter Cornell from Pike and Jeff Smetana from United, they were talking about this, and Councilman Scaringi actually was asking a lot of questions about the pilings underneath the foundation, how many would need to be checked, et cetera. So this concept was discussed at great length at the previous work session. And obviously, based on the information they have right now, they do not believe a worst case scenario exists. That being said, we believe it's prudent just to at least plan for or outline to you, provide you the information with what it would cost under that particular scenario. So we will move now to the next slide, Mr. Rogers. So this is a slide, obviously you've seen this rendering before. It has the housing and it has the parking garage. So just to reiterate what we told you at the last work session, the housing portion of the project is 122 market rate units. And it is estimated right now at $25 million. And that is 100% privately funded, meaning the developer is working with private financial institutions and is developing and is getting his money elsewhere. The parking underneath, as we indicated, we're looking at constructing 549 parking spots. That cost would be $23 million. And under that parking spot per cost formula that we were talking about before, that comes out to $30,965 per parking spot. And you'll notice that that's slightly under the cost per parking spot that across the city to build 7 Hawley Street. There's a variety of reasons for that. Obviously, economy of scales is one of them. When you build more, the cost per spot is less. So just to break down that 23 million, because that's really what you're interested in and what we're talking about. Again, as we said, 17 million for the garage. And under this scenario right here, I should outline this is the cost for the parking garage with the housing on top of it. So 17 million for the garage, 3 million for podium and code. And I'll explain what that concept means in a second. 2 million, which we obviously just went over, is the maximum for the foundation work, and $1 million for the contingency. And obviously the contingency, we could utilize all of that. We could utilize none of that. We could utilize something in the middle. That's obviously a target and standard with any sort of project. What does a podium and code mean? A podium and code means that obviously it would cost the city additional money in design and construction if we're moving forward, when we move forward with the housing portion of the project, because the garage would be designed and constructed differently. primarily because of the weight of the additional floors of housing, but also from a code standpoint. So I'll just give you an example. Well, what does code mean? In 7 Holly Street garage, the project's already done right now. There is no sprinkler system inside the 7 Holly Street garage. With this scenario here, where there's going to be housing above it, there would need to be a sprinkler system inside the parking garage itself to be compliant with code. That in and of itself is a $500,000 sort of cost. There are isolated and separate stairwells with regards to the parking garage and housing, and a host of other smaller examples that have to do with code-related issues when you're when you're incorporating a housing structure on top of the garage. And of course, the sheer weight and construction of the project is why we refer to it as a podium, a podium on top of the garage to house or incorporate the additional elements. So, Mr. Rogers, we can move to the next slide right there. So here's the city's breakdown of that 23 million that we have proposed. Obviously, $7 million from the fund balance. We have discussed that at length with in regards to ARPA funding, $3 million pilot bond, which Mr. Shager will elaborate on more, and then $13 million with general bonding. And of course, that number we anticipate, when I say that number, I mean the $13 million number and the $23 million overall number, we anticipate will go down when we find out the level of foundation work that would need to be done as a result of the geotechnical study. And of course, the geotechnical study cannot be completed until the parking garage is done, because it's a study and work that would need to take place underneath the garage. As I indicated, these cost projections represent the worst case scenario pricing. Based on what we know, we expect these numbers to be below that, but we wanted to present it to you this way. And when it comes in lower than that, obviously, that's just a very good thing. And so the last slide, if you will, is the tax revenue that would be generated from this project. As I indicated, there is no tax revenue coming in off the 7 Holly Street project. So and the existing parking garage right now provides $0 in property taxes to the city, county, and school district. If we simply just demolish the ramp and rebuilt it, that would still provide $0 in city, county, and school district property tax funding. The mixed use parking and housing, which is what we're proposing and want to advance, would bring in $12.6 million over 30 years in monies to the city, county, and school district. And the way that $12.6 million is broken down is through a $1.3 million in air right payments to the city and $11 million in pilot payments. And lastly, I would just reiterate that when we were looking at demolishing the Water Street garage, it presented us with a great opportunity to really be strategic and think outside the box, because parking garages last decades. In the case of the ones that were demolished, they've lasted 40 and 50 years. They help define your downtown, define your landscape. This was a very strategic parcel. It is a strategic parcel that's located at the gateway of the city of Binghamton, the heart of the commercial business district, along the beautiful waterways that we're trying to enhance. So instead of just simply building a new garage there, we wanted to leverage the maximum potential that this allowed. Certainly as we've seen, bringing more people into downtown helps revitalize our downtown. It helps us to increase our sales tax revenue, which under this administration has gone from the 3rd highest source of revenue to the 2nd highest source of revenue. And this is an opportunity for us to address a dilapidated parking structure, make significant economic improvements in downtown, bring more people into downtown, have this property contributing from a property tax standpoint, And of course, it also just helps with our negotiations with Boscov's as well. So with that, I think that's the points that I wanted to go through. And I think we'll just open it up to city council members if they have any questions on any of the items that I just.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions? Councilman Squirinji? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Chuck. Thank you for coming down.
Good evening, Councilman.
I just had two questions. You had followed up, Mayor, with respect to the piles at the foundation that we were talking about with the developers at our last work session. I know that the current proposed budget is kind of the liberal estimate if they had to not reuse, but rather replace every single one of them. And I know it's expected that will not be the case. I believe they had said they estimate that maybe approximately 80 to 90% of them can be used. Would you happen to know what the variance or the spread of that cost is? So for example, if they only had to replace 10% of them, we could kind of get an estimate of it not being $23 million, but being, whatever the lower amount might be, just to kind of get a general sense and an idea. Again, from a budgeting perspective, it definitely 100% makes sense the way it was presented. I was just wondering if that was information we might have.
Gio, I'll answer that. For the most part, they're hopeful that all the foundation and piles down there are going to be usable. They could go through and do like a temporary type test right now and tear up the garage and, do a few samples, but that's not the right answer. The right answer is tearing down the whole garage and getting a look at it. They believe, based off of the structure they see right there, that the piles are going to be in very good shape because there's not any water leaking through the current first floor into the ground. Okay, if water
Right.
was to start leaking into there, then there might be rust there, and they don't show that as a problem at this point.
That's good.
So they're hoping that the number is going to be on the lower end here.
Do we have an idea, Chuck, of what the variance of that is? Is it, $200,000? Is it $1 million, $2 million?
At this point, they won't put a number on it, Gio. And the other problem that they don't know is when these piles were driven down, they don't know if they were driven to bedrock. If that's the case,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. If they're not, then they'll have to see what they're pushed down to what weight level and decide from there. But
Right.
those are two big numbers they don't know, and they're not going to know that till we get it demolished.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just thought I'd ask the last question I had was, so the slide that alluded, I think it was either the second to the last or the last slide with the pilot information on it. So I think it was N number of dollars over 30 years. Does that mean it's not a standardized pilot and is a 30-year pilot?
That is 100% correct, Gio.
Okay.
And there's two forms here. There's a air rights agreement where the air rights are going to be greater in the beginning and lower at the end. And the pilot will be lower in the beginning and greater in the end. And that's set up
Right.
to pay a pilot bond. That additional $3,000 podium cost, the 3 million, excuse me, they're going to pay that through the air rights and the pilot agreement.
So one will attempt to wash the other, so to speak.
Yes, if you look at the spreadsheet I sent you out last week, you could see how.
Right. Yeah, I did see. Yeah, because one is progressive on the lower end, the other one is progressive on the ladder. So okay, thank you very much.
I have a question.
Councilman Burns.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for coming down. Very, very nice. I'm wondering about the 11 million in the pilot payments. Does the school share with that with us at all?
Yes, Councilman Burns, they will receive their share of it. I think it's after, I don't have the pilot agreement in front of me, but after like 7 years.
Yeah, like as is the case with all of our pilots, it's split between the city, county, and school district. So the county and the school district that currently get nothing currently, just as the case of the city, they will benefit with really not having to do anything.
So we're not going to get the entire 11 million.
That's correct.
Okay. And then I'm wondering about the 7 million out of the fund balance. Is that coming out of the fund balance that in your budget address, you said you were leaving?
No,
That accounted-
and this is, I will, and I'm sure Chuck will clean up how I say this, but one of the things that Chuck has been consistent on is when it comes to this lost revenue discussion that he's been having with council with regard to the ARPA funds. Once you have removed that from the ARPA funds and it becomes lost revenue, it really isn't ARPA funds anymore. It's part of the fund balance. But conceptually, from what it is that you're asking, the answer to that is no. It is money that 16 million, I think is what Councilman Burns is asking. We said we're leaving him 16 million. It's not now 16 million and we're subtracting 7 out of it. So we're still leaving 16 million after this because city council had agreed to move that 12+ million from the ARPA funds into the fund balance. So for your, I think, conceptual or discussion purposes, you should look at it as 7 million of the 12 million that came from the ARPA funds.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Freeman, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Mayor David.
Hello, Councilwoman.
Okay, so I also have a question regarding the pilot. I'm wondering why we are seeking a pilot agreement instead of a regular tax revenue, I guess, from this project.
Are you asking me why a pilot agreement is necessary for this project?
Correct.
Okay. Simply put, the taxes are so high in Binghamton that the project does not support itself without a pilot agreement.
Okay. And my other question is, why are you asking for this legislation to be expedited, particularly considering you yourself admitted we're probably going to hold it over? I'm wondering why this is expedited.
No, I mean, that's we as I indicated, we expect it to be held over. So I guess at that point, I mean, we're really not asking it to be expedited. We're asking for it to be held over and voted on at the next meeting.
I see. Okay.
Anything else, Councilwoman?
No, was Chuck, were you about to say something?
No, I'm fine with you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I have one
Anyone
more.
else? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Councilman Burns.
Yeah. So what do we think that the payment will be for the bond each year after, if we're getting the money from the pilot? So what is that going to, and we're borrowing 13 million. So what would that payment be each year if after we add the pilot money into it? Because we're getting no money now. So we will every year get some money from the pilot, even though it goes up every year. What do you think the payment would be out of the budget?
Councilman Burns, I don't have that number right here in front of me, but I can calculate it off of, say, 2.5% on that $13 million, get you a number. I don't have it here.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Councilwoman Riley?
Thank you, Council President. Hello, Mayor David and Mr. Shager. So just to clarify for me, based upon the Exhibit 6 that you provided earlier that I'm not sure if the public has access to, it says here that we will pay the pilot bond payments for the first 3 years, and then the apartment owner will then repay us through a prepaid air rights, but those are two different funding lines. So am I misinterpreting something?
I see how you're interpreting it, Councilman Riley. They're looking for the first 2 years, we'll probably have to pay interest, and I'm still negotiating this pilot bond. Okay, talking to people about it. And once I get it negotiated, I will get it so that it fits into the payment schedule that works for all parties.
Okay, so we could potentially, the city could potentially owe a lot more for the first 3 years. I think they began paying per this estimate in 2024. Is that correct?
If the way you saw it set up in what I sent out to you, the question is, it would be set up as a receivable from the UB companies.
The question was 2024.
Yes,
Correct? Okay,
correct.
so then that's based upon the projection date that these apartments would be up and operable by 2024 as well?
Yes,
So, because that's why we selected 2024.
correct.
Okay.
The time schedule right now is, if this thing goes as well as we anticipate, the housing units will be up in the middle of 23. People should be living in them in 23.
Okay. And then similar to, well, I guess that was already answered. There was a mention earlier in the mayor's presentation, which I would also like a copy and hope that this will be posted online so that everyone can go back and review. But there was mention that one of our newest parking structures, often called ramps here, is not revenue generating, I heard.
No, that's, let me clarify that. We were talking about generating property taxes, not parking revenue. Those are two different sources of funding. So
I think that's what was said. That's why I wanted to clarify.
yes, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
So since the newest ramp does generate taxable revenue.
Parking revenue.
Parking revenue, it does not generate taxable.
It does not generate property taxes. It generates parking revenue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
And my question about the presentation being publicly available?
Well, certainly as these meetings are recorded and this is part of the record, you can view these through the City Council YouTube meetings. Mr. Rogers, you should feel free to email these slides, the members of City Council. I'm sure we can post them on the website somewhere. It's very easily accessible for the public. We created this to try to make it as easy and user-friendly for individuals and members of the public to understand. So we would like this information out, and if you could help us get it out to the public by sharing it on your specific mediums as well, that would be much appreciated.
Great, I look forward to receiving it.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Thank you. Then we'll move on to RL 213.
The next RL is basically
I don't
the
know if you're
city.
staying, Mayor. Are you staying for that one or no? You're leaving, right?
Next one is the city finance, or guaranteeing the finances to the contract.
Yes,
I don't have-
Pike United for the Water Street parking garage. Does anybody have any questions? Councilwoman Friedman.
Thank you, Madam President. I am wondering why you are asking for this to be expedited, please.
As the mayor said,
Yeah,
we don't expect it. to.
that was a blanket statement for all of the things associated with the parking garage. It wasn't meant just for the RL that we were discussing. And I think we're trying to be very fair and reasonable that this is probably the biggest project we've ever done. We're providing you with a lot of information. We want you to feel comfortable with the project, have answers to all your questions. We're trying to build this around a timeline that provides you maximum time to analyze, ask questions. I mean, you know us, we would love everything to be expedited, but we also recognize that we're trying to hear what you say with regards to these things. And we're making every attempt that we can to try to work with you and give you the information and give you as much time to ask your questions as possible. So anything related that's on the agenda Wednesday related to this Water Street parking garage, we would ask, I guess, be held over and voted on at the next meeting to give you as much time as possible.
Okay, that seems like an extra step to me, if you ask my opinion. it seems like it's kind of removing the ability for us to hold it over meaningfully, because you're expecting for this to be on the regular timeline. So I appreciate what you just said about having it, this enormous project be on a timeline that allows us to get as much information as we can. And I just feel like expediting is sort of the opposite of allowing more time. It's crunching the timeline.
Well, I'm not sure how it got on there as expedite, but we're not asking you to expedite it. And it sounds like you're saying we're taking away your ability to hold it over and protest. If you would like to be the one to hold it over and protest, I certainly have no objection with that either. You can't have it both ways, where you say we don't give you enough time for things, and then we're trying to build a schedule that anticipates things could be held over. Where we're simply trying to give you what you want.
Right. Well, I don't want people to think that I only hold legislation over to protest. But it just, I hope you can understand where I'm coming from, that on the one hand, like you said, this is an enormous project, and you are trying to allow us to have enough time to research what we want. And again, and it just, to me, strikes, to expedite legislation strikes me as a decision that is made to reduce the timeline. That's just my opinion. So I was just a little bit confused, because I'm sort of hearing two different things.
Council Freeman, let me put my comments in on this. When the mayor made his presentation 2 weeks ago, he said he'd be sending down legislation for you to vote on. Okay. My intention in putting all that legislation together was that you were going to vote on it this coming Wednesday. Since we did not get this to you in I'm going to say a fairly timely basis, I sent out the email asking it to be expedited. The mayor did not feel that you had enough time asking you to move that kind of money. So that's where the difference is coming.
I think those that have no more questions regarding this issue, and yes, it is a big project, but we had some time to really digest all the information that's been given to us, not just the last couple of weeks, but for a while now. I think those of us who might be ready to vote on it Wednesday should be able to do it, and those who feel like they might want to hold it over have that option. Councilwoman Riley, you have your hand up?
I do have my hand up. Thank you. So similar to most of the projects, the revitalization projects, things we're doing in the city, typically there is a point person for community questions and involvement. Who will be that person regarding the project we're discussing?
For the next 90+ days?
No. So for example, there's a town meeting coming up this week about the downtown revitalization. There's a phone number for city residents to ask questions. We don't want to reserve that just for public comment, because you can't often respond. Who can they reach out to for details surrounding this project?
Sure. The people with any questions or comments should feel free to reach out to the mayor's office. They can reach out to Jared Cram directly, Megan Brockett, myself, Chuck Shager. But if you're looking for one central point of contact, I would encourage you to direct comments to Jared Cram.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Let's move on. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Chuck, we have RL 210,
One's 210.
and that's amended 2021 general budget for legal services in the law department.
Okay, this is we're short all kinds of legal funds right now, and this is moving some funds around to assist in the legal department. There's other ones that Ken has out here too that I think he sent an email on.
Ken, are you on here?
I am.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Sorry, it's a little dark. Yeah, this is just a follow-up. I think I explained to everybody, we had come to council before. We have a lot of outside litigation where personnel office and my office are actually witnesses. So we have a significant amount of outside counsel. There are two different RLs here. One is for the law budget. That's a much smaller number. That's generally for attorneys who kind of provide assistance to us. And then in the insurance fund, that's where we actually have outside counsel representing the municipality in totality. And, that has to do with people suing the city and liability issues. That's why it's part of the insurance fund.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for 210 and 211? Okay, thank you. So now we're moving on to Mr. Rogers, RL 212.
Okay, so we are asking to renew the contract with the Broome County Dog Shelter for dog shelter services.
Any questions? Councilwoman Friedman?
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Lee. How are you?
But how are you?
Good, thanks. Okay, so I was looking over the documents from the last time that this contract came up, and I noticed that in 2017, Councilman Mata voted against this. And so I had sent you an email, which you followed up promptly with, but I was wondering if anybody who was at that meeting might be able to shed some light on the objections that were raised, just out of curiosity, against this contract. If anyone has information, I'm just curious.
Councilwoman, I was not part of city council. It's Councilman Scanlon in 2017, so I have no idea what he did there.
Okay, thanks.
I think
I'm wondering-
Councilman Scanlon is listed on this document as well.
But absent from that meeting.
I may be mistaken. Maybe I was on city council. I have to count back. This is my 5th year on city council, so I guess I would have been on there, yeah. But I don't recall that at all. I don't recall why I voted no.
I have to be honest, I was there too, but this was 2017. I don't remember.
Okay, Lee responded very promptly to my request, and I have the meeting minutes from that meeting. I just, whenever somebody has a different opinion, I'm curious if there were any points raised that.
I'll reach out to him. He's one of my constituents now. I'll reach out to him.
Oh, that would
To find out. I will ask him. I'm curious too.
Yeah. Thanks.
Oh, Councilman Riley, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Do we have any information on the rate at the time, at the 2017 time as well? Is there a significant increase in what we're being asked to pay?
I believe the rate, so when we renewed the contract in 2017, it was a significant reduction. I think it was somewhere around $80,000 a year down to $60,000 a year. And then it, according to the contract, goes up by CPI every year. And I believe we're up to 62, 63, somewhere around there. And the new contract calls for that same rate at CPI. So for 2022, we'd be right at 63,000, which we'll be going over shortly in our budget hearings.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So there was a very late RL that came down today. It was literally right before we started the meeting. That was RL 214 with a request for an additional $40,000 for the roof. Chuck, please talk to us about that. I was hoping that Ron would be here to shed some light too.
Ron could not be here. I'm not sure if Lee was able to send all the information out that we have, but it's for the roof on city council.
Yeah.
I guess when they were looking at trying to put on the roof, whatever the original drawings were and what the actual drawing or what actually took place are two different things. and they have
Wait,
no
I'm sorry,
place.
say that again?
The original drawings that the contractor went by when they were bidding on it, what was the drawings versus what actually was done are two different things. So now the way they proposed doing it, they had to put some type of edging around here to attach it to, which is going to cost about $40,000 more. Everything that's out there right now, all the scaffolding is all rented. And we're asking for this to be expedited so we can not have to wait another 2 weeks, and we'll end up paying for that scaffolding since it wasn't part of our RFP.
Well, I'm not gonna lie that this is frustrating as hell for me, okay?
Sophia,
Okay,
I don't disagree, okay?
it's frustrating.
And let me tell you something that's in there. If you look at
So-
the document, it was 9/24 is when they got the quote, okay?
So at 9/24, September 24th is what you're saying,
Yes,
is
but
when that came down from Ron.
no, that's not when it came down. That's when Ron got the quote from the contractors, okay? But he was off last week.
Because I was just gonna say, why didn't we do this 2 weeks ago?
I don't disagree with you, but Ron was off last week and he came asking this morning, how can we do this? What can we do?
I mean, the frustration for me is not only the fact that it's, well, you're asking for more money, okay? But why is it taking this long? Is there something that we're missing? I don't know that you have the answers. I was really hoping that Ron would be here. It's October, and now we need more money to move forward. And if we don't, then delay the project to how long? I don't even know.
I don't know why the project's taking so long. I can't answer that.
All right, so can we get the data from you or some email or something, update all council, what the heck is going on? I don't understand this process. So if you could have- thank you.
I'll ask Ron tomorrow for an update on
And
council
I don't know if
chambers.
anybody else has any other questions, but I'm
This is
a
Councilwoman
little
Riley. I do-
troubled by all this. Councilman Riley, go ahead.
Yes, so if a proposal was submitted, who was responsible for creating the drawing by which the proposal and the contract was drafted? Were we responsible for that drawing, or was the contractor responsible for the drawing?
We're responsible for the original documentation that we gave them in the RFP, which was from the original engineering documents years ago.
Oh, so we're at fault.
Yes.
Oh. Okay. That ends my question.
Okay.
This is Councilman-
Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Councilman Scanlon. I don't know if anybody's, things happen obviously during construction, and this is something that maybe the contractor didn't see we needed until he started redoing the roof. So I'm gonna defend the contractor here for a minute, and also probably Ron Lake, because obviously if something wasn't anticipated, I assume we would have heard about this before. So things happen during construction, and this sounds like something that happened during construction. And it would be, obviously, I don't believe we have a choice. We have to do this. Because otherwise you're gonna leave a roof that doesn't have an edge on it. Maybe that's probably gonna possibly leak somewhere, down the road. So obviously there's something needed. Thank you.
Well, I would agree that it's obviously something that we need. I just feel some frustration with the process and just what feels like missing information. That's all. Councilman Burns, see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, Chuck, I see the money being transferred from contingency to another line, but is this money out of the ARPA funds?
No, it's not, Councilman. It's coming out of the contingency fund into a line that we have for things like this that pop up, a general infrastructure line in the general fund. We're moving it within general fund contingency to general fund infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Councilwoman Friedman.
Thank you, Madam President. As a follow-up to Councilman Burns's question, so this extra $39,000 is additional funding that's required after we account for the $659,000 that came from ARPA?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam President,
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
Madam President,
Yeah, go ahead.
Could-
Ms. Swearengin.
could we please direct the city clerk to reach out to Ron Lake to attend our next work session, to actually be able to show us, whether it be a PowerPoint or not, what was missed in terms of the original drawings? I'm trying to be as open-minded and as I possibly can be. I mean, I know this building is 50-ish years old, and original drawings may not, be to scale or may have missed something, but it seems to me that edging for the roof is kind of a basic structural aspect to it. And I probably would also encourage that when projects like this move forward, because I think Chuck kind of there's a domino effect that occurs, right? So the scaffolding is a good example. So because we're renting that, due to the nature of the chamber, of the shape and size of it, now we incur additional cost in relation to renting that, and a variance of that proportion is probably something in future RFPs that should be built in. So that way we are either A, avoiding something like this in the future altogether, or at a bare minimum, at least minimizing when something like this happens. I agree with Councilman Scanlon. I think he's right, just in a broad general sense, these things can happen. So for example, in the mayor's presentation regarding the Water Street parking ramp, right, there is a variance with respect to the piles in the foundation, right? We're given the most liberal cost factor, so we know it won't be more than that. There should probably be something with that cost variance that's built into these things in the future. So again, we're either A, avoiding this altogether, or B, at least mitigating it to some extent.
Thank you, Councilman Swearengin. Okay, yeah, Councilwoman Riley.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Again, in the email that we're drafting, before he appears at our next work session, I would like to know the updated timeline, seeing that we now will have to wait for approval of this budget change as well.
Yeah, I think if possible, maybe we can send us an update. This is being asked, this is.
We'd like to vote on
We'd
Wednesday,
like to
so we
vote
don't have to
on
wait another.
Wednesday. And so we need to have as much information as possible. I don't know if there are specific questions you'd like to email.
Council
Ron?
President, what we
Yes.
could also do is, when's the next budget hearing? When is it?
Thursday.
So if
Thursday.
we can get all the information you need for Wednesday, that's great. If not, maybe we could do it on Thursday before that meeting possibly. Ron should be
If that
here and he
works
should,
for Ron, that's fine.
right, he should get all the information to you.
Any other questions?
Wait, please clarify. What was suggested was that if we can't get the information, we would vote then on Thursday? Is that what
No.
What I said, Councilman Riley, is if you don't get the information you need tomorrow, maybe we vote on it Thursday before the budget meeting instead of Wednesday, but I'm confident Ron has all this information available to him. He'll get it to you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. So we will now move on to pending legislation, and that would be 3.
Yes, we have 11 items in addition to the 3 that are expedited. I won't go through them one by one, but if you have any questions.
If there are no questions, I'm assuming that everyone has taken a look at this. If there are no questions, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a second. Thank you. Have a good night. Meeting adjourned.
Good night.
Night.
Night.